Coming up, U.S. Coast Guard helicopter pilot Nicole Weber, living out her childhood dream on one of the country's most challenging coastlines.
If we're lucky, we'll have 6-foot waves, but I've seen anywhere up to almost 30-foot waves.
And
I'm proud to be part of, this wave of Native American writing.
Author Brandon Hobson, his novel Where the Dead Sit Talking, and his shot at the National Book Award. And Cherokee actress and activist Candice Bird, on stage and off. What representation means to her.
I was looking for Native forms of expression, but I never read a Native play before. I had never read a Native play by a Native playwright.
The Cherokees.
A thriving American Indian tribe.
Our history.
Our culture.
Our people.
Our future.
The principles of a historic nation.
Sewn into the fabric of a modern world.
Hundreds of thousands strong.
Learning. Growing.
Succeeding.
And stood fast.
In the past, we have persevered through struggle.
But the future is ours to write.
Osiyo.
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 These are the voices of the Cherokee people.
Osiyo. I'm Principal Chief Bill John Baker. Welcome to the Cherokee Nation and OsiyoTV. We are so proud to share our culture, our heritage, our history, and our language with you. Wado.
Osiyo, it's how we say hello in Cherokee. I'm your host, Jennifer Lauren, at Northeastern State University in Tahlequah, Oklahoma, home of the former Cherokee Female Seminary, one of 2 institutions for higher education formerly run by the Cherokee Nation. We'll have more on that in just a bit. But first, Nicole Weber is a U.S. Coast Guard helicopter pilot in Coos Bay, Oregon. A self-proclaimed adrenaline junkie, she never lost sight of her childhood dream.
I'm Nicole Webber, maiden name Garrett, and I'm a rotary wing aviator for the Coast Guard. I like adventure. My job is adventurous. You could have a very calm day when you come into work, or you could have the craziest case of your entire life. You just never know what you're gonna get, which is pretty exciting. Keeps you on your toes. We are in Coos Bay, North Bend, Oregon. So the Oregon coast is beautiful with the cliff lines and all the lighthouses and the sand dunes and everything. It's basically a giant playground. Go fly around, see wildlife, see people working, land in little mountain confined areas, and it's cool. I always knew I was Cherokee, but it took on a whole new meaning when I got older. It would have been my great-grandpa using money from allotment land that they had sold to move to California. And they raised my grandpa and his 2 brothers. And then eventually they made it to Bakersfield, Tehachapi area, which is where I was born. When my dad, when he was growing up, he raced desert racing on dirt bikes. Our parents encouraged us to be outside, so we had a lot of adventure. I grew up actually coming down here to the Oregon coast very frequently to ride quads on the sand dunes. And through doing that, I would always see the Coast Guard helicopters flying overhead. And I always kind of saw that and was like, that's really cool. But it really hit home to me through racing, through being on the sand dunes and seeing like emergency medicine from first responders to seeing medevac. And I remember seeing that and being like, wow, that would be a really cool job. And I was walking down the beach in Florence and there were 2 Coast Guard people walking. So I ran up to them and I was like, hey, how do you become a Coast Guard helicopter pilot? We drove an hour down here, found somebody that was getting off of work, and they told me about the academy. And from that point on, it was like, all right, academy it is, let's apply to this, see if I can get in, and I did, and it took off. The Coast Guard Academy is smaller, but it is the same concept as West Point, Annapolis, the Air Force Academy. I know the Coast Guard puts no limits on what you can do as a female. I think at that point in time, we were at the highest percentage of women for an academy class. I approached the academy with, hey, this is my 4-year application for flight school, ready, set, go. And it worked. Flight school, I was one of 4 girls out of about 15 people that got flight school. I do love my job, especially the flying portion. I have some desk work too, but the flying portion's pretty cool. Morning, everyone. On the coast today, here in north is VFR, marginal VFR throughout the day, forecasted to stay that way. Gold Beach in south is calling low IFR right now. It's supposed to clear up around 11 o'clock. And then at 1400 today, Newport is supposed to go to. I'm a rotary wing aviator for the Coast Guard. What that means is I stand duty. It's kind of like a firehouse model where we come in and we're here for 24 hours and that's our duty shift. Every day we'll fly up to here at Newport and we'll stand a 24-hour watch there as well. And at that point in time, if the alarm goes off, we're launching. And it can be anything.
Command Center has received a report of a person in the water in Coos Bay. Put the ready helo on the line. Provide SLDMB. This is a drill. This is a drill.
So the Oregon coast is one of the most challenging areas in the Coast Guard to operate. It is everything that a pilot can do to hold position, especially with how dark it gets here, with overcast skies and rain and the very typical Pacific Northwest weather. If we're lucky, we'll have 6-foot waves, but I've seen anywhere up to almost 30-foot waves.
Up, and he's giving me the ready pickup signal.
Roger. Register for 2.
Rescue briefing.
Hazards remain the same. Must be sling deployment to the rescue swimmer in 35 feet.
If we're working with a boat and waves are big, they're moving with those bigger waves. So, and if we're out in the middle of the ocean, we may have nothing else to look at but that boat. Now I'm gonna look down here and focus on this boat, focus on this boat. Okay, that's getting disorienting. Look at the horizon.
On hot mic, have target in sight. Come forward and right, 20, sight. Ready to just pull the aircraft.
As creative as people want to be and how they get themselves into trouble is what we'll get called for. So usually when we get a call, it's something fairly serious.
Bringing him in now.
Roger.
He said it's cold.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Is he still doing okay?
He's good.
I've got a big old smile on his face. Okay.
For me, being back here at this air station, my dreams have come full circle. I was the kid camping at the sand dunes watching the helicopters fly overhead. I went to this unit to figure out how to become a helicopter pilot, and now I'm here. You know, now I'm responding to those cases, now I'm flying over those places that I rode my quad all the time.
Must be sling deployment to the rescue swimmer in 35 feet and heading 090, expect if I can hold it.
Everything happened for a reason, and it put me where I needed to be, and here I am.
Candice Bird is a Cherokee actress and activist, always looking for Native representation on stage, something she's happy to say is easier to find today than in years past.
We, as Native people, as Cherokee people, I think that we are innate storytellers. We know these stories, and we know how to tell them. Osiyo, Candice Bird Dawado, Aya Anid Salaki. Hello, my name is Candice Bird, and I am an actor and an advocate. I was born and raised here in Tahlequah, Oklahoma. I am the middle child of 3. I have an older brother, Joseph, and a younger sister, Julia. My parents were both educators. One parent chose the political route, while my mother stayed in public school teaching. And my mom really wanted us to go into the arts because, well, I think she thought that we had a talent for it. Also, we weren't that great at sports. So when I went into grad school, that's where I started. You know, I got more of the classical theater, got more technique and training under my belt. Then I started delving into storytelling because I was looking for Native forms of expression. But I never read a Native play before. I had never read a Native play by a Native playwright because there's not a lot of Native theater out there. There's not a lot of Native theater that was being produced at the time that I was in grad school. Most people in America have never seen, they're more likely to see a portrayal of redface than they are to actually see a Native person in a Native role, let alone written by a Native playwright. If that has been the diet of the American theater-going public, this is a great opportunity to hopefully change perceptions about who we are as people, who we are as individuals, who we are, and finally being humanized. And that's what theater is. That's part of what theater is to me. Being an actor, it's a thrill. It's being alive on stage. I find that when I'm on stage, and there's a difference, of course, between being on stage when there isn't an audience and when there is an audience. And when there's the audience, there's an electricity. It's like you're sharing energy, and you take that energy and you hopefully transfer it back to them, and then it becomes an interesting relationship between the audience and the performer. I was doing a full-scale production of Sovereignty by Mary Catherine Nagel. I played Sarah Ridge Polson. I worked with Mary Catherine several times, and so this was a natural fit.
I didn't need any convincing. You had me at Osiyo.
I had seen one of my role models, Delana Studi, read this role. Delana Studi was the first Native American person I ever saw on stage. I saw her in August Osage County when she came to Tulsa. My mother asked me, "What do you want for your birthday?" And I told her that the only thing I wanted to see was I wanted to go see August Osage County, and I wanted to watch Delana Studi play Jonna on stage. Then later I got to do a reading with her, and I was so psyched, and I tried not to fangirl, but I did. And I thought, wow, you know, this really can happen. We really can have a presence. We can have a space for ourselves on stage. That's where I got hooked for this advocacy theater, and MK was very instrumental in creating this, and it was very specific culturally, bringing language, bringing your culture, bringing your ancestors into these spaces and knowing that they are with you. One of the things that attracts me to theater is its inherently collaborative nature. There's a special feeling that comes from being an ensemble, from creating within a group.
You feeling ready? I do. Some of them, the reactions were very nice, and some of them were less nice.
It's intangible. It's innate. There's a synchronization that happens.
I'm a theater maker, and I'm a storyteller in my community, and I'm interested in discovering ways and techniques of how to empower some of our vulnerable voices that are in our communities.
That's one reason why I'm drawn to children's theater and working with young people.
Osiyo, Diniotle, how are you guys today? Host.
Children are easiest to talk to about this. They have that innate understanding. When we grow up as adults, you become a little bit more inhibited. You become safer. You become cautious. You are the adult in the room. And certain things are expected of adults. But in theater, that's not necessarily true. In theater, I feel like a lot of my techniques, a lot of my schooling, honestly, if I could sum it up, it was destructuring and learning how to get back to being 7 years old on Christmas morning.
And off popped the head of the little songbird.
I don't necessarily see myself as an individual voice. I see us as a chorus. I want to empower other people to tell their stories, to find their voice, because there is a space. There is space for us here.
After the forced removal from their homelands, leaders of the Cherokee Nation sought ways of protecting their people in the future. Their answer? Education. The leadership of the Cherokee Nation reasoned that by producing their own teachers, businessmen, and political leaders, they could best ward off the unwanted influence of outside nations. The Cherokee Tribal Council established both the female and male seminaries in 1846, just 8 years after arriving in their new homes in Indian Territory. The goals of the seminaries were clear: The tribe wanted to develop well-educated Cherokees who could defend tribal sovereignty and protect the Cherokee way of life. The male seminary would be a 3-story brick structure and would offer an education that rivaled top-tier academies in the Northeast for Cherokee students from all backgrounds and classes.
Before they completed construction of the buildings, they sent a committee of 3 councilmen to the Northeast on a fact-finding mission. And so they went to analyze the top academies in the Northeast. And the idea was that they were going to create replicas of these schools in Indian Territory.
The Cherokee government recruited teachers from Yale, Mount Holyoke, and Newton Theological Seminary to become the first of many Eastern-educated teachers who traveled west of the Mississippi to teach in the Cherokee Nation. On May 6, 1851, 4 years after Chief John Ross laid the cornerstone, the Cherokee Nation opened the Cherokee Male Seminary, the first secular school west of the Mississippi River. Students ages 17 to 21 studied Latin, English, grammar, arithmetic, and geography, preparing the young men for a university education. Several generations of young men who attended the seminary from 1851 to 1910 had great influence on Cherokee history, identity, and culture.
Other tribes had boarding schools that were academies, but they weren't necessarily modeled after Northeastern academies, and they weren't recruiting teachers from the Northeast. Usually they were run by missionaries. So what the Cherokees do is actually pretty innovative.
Unlike federal boarding schools, which sought to kill the Indian and save the man through religious conversion, the Cherokee Male Seminary was run by the Cherokee government. It sought to protect their nationhood and culture, emphasizing the importance of Cherokee independence.
At federal boarding schools, there were strict rules against speaking in your native language, and it wasn't like that at the Cherokee male and female seminaries. You were allowed to keep your Cherokee name, you were allowed to speak in Cherokee. A lot of the later teachers graduated from the seminary and they returned to teach at the seminary. So you have fewer white teachers, more Cherokee teachers. So the intention was completely different because the intention for the male and female seminaries was to strengthen tribal sovereignty and to strengthen independence and to strengthen cultural identity.
The male seminary faced a number of challenges throughout its history. In 1856, the school did not enroll students due to economic problems, and as the Civil War ensued, the tribe was not able to reopen the school. During this time, many of the seminary's buildings fell into disrepair or were used as hospitals, stables, and warehouses. The tribe would work to reopen the male seminary by the mid-1870s, eventually rebuilding the school to what some said was a better common school system than the surrounding states had to offer. In 1910, the school burned down and was never reopened, ending a remarkable chapter in Cherokee history.
Every aspect of the school symbolized what the Cherokees were capable of achieving. John Ross and the council gave young Cherokee men and women the opportunity to have a foot firmly planted in each culture. So the legacy is that they symbolized the spirit of resilience and ingenuity and adaptation characteristic of the Cherokee Nation.
Let's talk Cherokee. I'm Cherokee. Jijalagi. I'm Cherokee. Jijalagi.
Brandon Hobson is a Cherokee storyteller sharing his knowledge through literature. As a celebrated author, he hopes his latest book adds even more context to Native American issues.
I carried the shovel down the path toward the lake to find Rosemary and Nora. But as I made my way through the grass and trees closer to the water, they were nowhere to be found. I followed the path without looking back from where I came. It was like being in a dream, where you're walking down your neighborhood street on a sunny day, then turn a corner, and suddenly you're trudging through a brutal blizzard. I was afraid of looking back in case the scene had changed completely, but somehow I felt better knowing I needed to only pay attention to what was ahead of me. My name's Brandon Hobson. Received a PhD in creative writing from Oklahoma State University, and I'm the author of Where the Dead Sit Talking, which was a 2018 finalist for the National Book Award in Fiction. I grew up in El Reno, Oklahoma, which is west of Oklahoma City, and have lived in Oklahoma my whole life. I think what drew me to writing was in college, taking an Introduction to Literature course, and where we started reading, and I found myself really moved by everything I was reading. Just something clicked, discovering all these new writers and the idea that here's a story about nothing necessarily. And I started feeling these things that I was reading in college that I didn't when I was younger. And thinking about that ultimately drew me into writing about things. I've been writing a long time. I didn't really have much bigger success until Where the Dead Sit Talking came out. Rosemary picked up a tiny rock and threw it at the water. She turned and said something to Nora, who pointed to the spot where she threw it. I imagine them walking to the water. I imagine them entering the lake and splashing around till Rosemary became annoyed. Where the Dead Sit Talking. It's about Sequoia, a 15-year-old Cherokee boy who his mother is locked up in jail for a nonviolent crime, and he ultimately finds himself in with a non-native foster family, along with two other foster kids who are there, a younger boy named George and an older girl named Rosemary. He becomes strangely obsessed with Rosemary in a way that I think I see a lot of teenage boys, or I saw when I was in social work, a lot of teenage boys develop obsessions over things. When I started writing, I had the image, it always starts with an image, and I had that image, the sort of landscape in my mind. I was just thinking of, a rural town, a small, and that's the thing about Oklahoma is all these small towns, a lot of times the main streets, they all kind of look alike to me, right? They're abandoned old stores that aren't there anymore, that aren't, they're out of business. But nothing brought me in touch with the moment, not seeing Rosemary as she tried to console me, not her hand touching my head, and certainly not Nora Drake, who wasn't even concerned, Nora, who hadn't thanked me. When I finished Where the Dead Sit Talking, my hope was, did I tell this story the best way that I possibly can? So I was just happy knowing that it was going to come out in hardback. That was very exciting for me. At that point, I wasn't thinking about reviews. I wasn't thinking about how it would be, any kind of reception at all. Publishers Weekly gave it a positive review early on. It wasn't until the National Book Award announced their long list when it really struck me that, it's doing pretty well. When it made the finalist list, I was really just sort of floored because I thought, wow, there were a lot of good books on the long list. So to make, the top 5, and then maybe it's like making the Final Four in NCAA basketball.
We're lucky to have Where the Dead Sit Talking. So please join me in welcoming to the stage Brandon Hobson.
I do think it professionally has helped me. The emails start coming in, I went straight from New York to Miami, to the Miami Book Festival. And then I went, was invited to Amherst College in Massachusetts. So I did that, the Tucson Book Festival. It's really been a great experience. I was quiet. As they walked away, I could feel my anger building. Certain situations bothered me to the point of feeling pressure in my chest, and this was one of them. I leaned back and looked to the sky where a hawk soared in the clouds. For a while, I lay there until I felt well enough to stand. I'm real happy with Where the Dead Sit Talking being, considered a Native American book. And I hope that I'm considered, at some level, on some level, a part of Native American writing. The older I've gotten, the more important my Cherokee identity has become, my heritage, and the more I've thought about it. My ancestors walked the Trail of Tears, so that story has always fascinated me, and it's always haunted me. I feel like it's a very special part of who I am, not just as a person, but I think as an artist, as a writer, storytelling, and looking at it as an art form. The question that I continue to explore, that my ancestors asked at some point was, so, what is home? We're being forced out, where is our home? And that's a very haunting question. I don't think we want to lose track of where our home is. I'm proud to be part of, this wave of Native American writing. I hope that my books and my writing and the next one is stylistically different than this one. I hope that my writing is diverse enough that I can't be labeled as a specific type of writer.
We hope you enjoyed our show. And remember, you can always watch entire episodes and share your favorite stories online at Osio.tv. There is no Cherokee word for goodbye because we know we'll see you again. We say, Dodadago ha'i. Wado.
In the Cherokee Nation, news happens every day.
Cherokee Nation's economic impact on the state of Oklahoma now exceeds $2 billion.
The dollars that are generated here are creating jobs.
It benefits everyone. Creating headlines.
The new 469,000 square foot health facility is the result of the largest joint venture agreement ever.
For the people of the Cherokee Nation, and will impact them for generations to come.
Creating opportunities.
Cherokee Nation employees can now take 8 weeks of paid maternity leave.
We have lots of young mothers and young families, and this is something that's very exciting.
This year, the tribe awarded $5 million to superintendents from about 100 public school districts.
When it comes to education, we're all in it together.
Creating a better place to call home.
The Wilma P. Mankiller Health Center in Stillwell, Oklahoma, nearly doubled in size.
That's going to provide more jobs.
For more Cherokee Nation news, visit onadiskoe.com.